So real quickly before we get into this video, I just wanted to say no matter the outcome that you see on the track, this video will still be special to me because this was the first ever opportunity I had to drive someone else's sprint car. Those opportunities nowadays are few and far between, so it was fun that I got the chance to make this video, go to ISCS Week of Speed, call it my one night ride of Speedweek, and get the opportunity to race side by side with my younger sister as we were mainly there for her. So we're gonna get right into this video and I'm gonna catch up with you guys after qualifying. Well, I found a ride for a night of ISCS Week of Speed. This is actually technically the third night of seven races in 8 days. Welcome back to today's video. Tonight I'm gonna be competing in the Brian Crockett owned BC Motorsports number I-1. Now this is a limited sprint, not a 360, not a 410. We're back at home, and this week was mainly for my younger sister Carly to go out there and race all these new tracks, and we were supporting her. But yesterday at night number 2 at the Cottage Grove Speedway, Brian Crockett, the series director and car owner, he said, hey man, if I can get the car to the racetrack tomorrow, would you like to run and try it out? And I was like, well, you know, I'd just be sitting in the grandstands otherwise, so absolutely. So I made sure to bring my gear bag. Here's a look at the car. Walking on out here, like I said, the BC Motorsports number I-1. This thing has probably ran anywhere between 5 or 10 shows with a handful of different drivers so far at Cottage Grove. So I'm just happy to kind of be on that list. Brian was a legendary driver down in California back in his day, and he still rips this thing every once in a while. So we're gonna be getting after it tonight. Group qualifying, a heat race, and a 25-lap A-main event. We've been successful in the limited many times. I'm sure this is gonna feel much slower than our 410, but overall it's gonna be a fun night racing with Brian, and for the first time ever, driving someone else's sprint car. So like I said, in about 10 minutes we're going to be on track for engine heat, and then we are in the first group of qualifying, so it might be a little slimy. Get out there and see how this thing runs. So my first laps out in the I-1 are complete around the Cottage Grove Speedway. Rolled out there, wasn't really sure what to expect. We were in the first group, so the track was a little bit greasy, but immediately flat-foot it kind of like you can around Cottage Grove in qualifying, and was able to really roll right through the middle. And during our 3-lap session, I felt like we had alright speed, but where I was most impressed with the car is how well it handled. In the limited division with the lack of horsepower, it seems like you almost have to drive them a little bit more, and you have to be really smooth. And with the I-1, I would almost go into the corner, and if you watch the footage, I was not up on the wheel really at all. Just smooth, almost like a go-kart. A lot less sawing. If I wanted to put the car right in the middle of the track, I could just go there and just follow with wherever it went, and it just kind of kept going forward. So I was super impressed with that, and this is also because this package on the I-1 is way different than the 18T. And honestly, what's on the I-1 is different than most cars in the pit area, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that and what Brian Crockett's doing with it. So I have this footage from later in the night when I kind of do a walk around of the race car to describe what it's all about. Here it is. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the package we have here on the I-1 to give you guys some details, because this thing is much different than the 18T and what I run on a regular basis. first off, for a limited engine, this is a limited class. These engines make anywhere from 550 to 600 horsepower. And if you would like, you could also run a crate motor with the limiteds, and that's actually what we're doing tonight. Brian usually has his own limited. He builds engines himself for guys in Oregon and Washington. So he has his own engine, but right now parts are a little hard to come by. He's been having some problems with his own. He doesn't have really a whole lot of time to fix it. So he wanted to get something that was reliable to make laps. Therefore, he went to a crate, which this thing is probably down about 100 horsepower from, for example, what's in the 22C, and that is kind of why tonight has been a little difficult. So we have a crate engine, and then also one thing I wanted to talk about as far as how this race car is set up. So for example, the 18T, and this is what's mainly standard. There's probably not a lot of guys across the country that are doing what's on this car, but most people just run shocks and torsion bars. And that is how the car rides, but actually what Brian has going here, which the car handles extremely well, almost like a go-kart. It doesn't really lean to the left or lean to the right. It actually drives really, really good, but this is a coilover car. Get a little up close here, you can kind of see, and that's the cover right there. But if you look here at the front rack, there is no torsion bars, no stops. So that is how this car is set up, and you can also see it here in the rear. You can see the rear arm here, but there is no torsion bars, and then we have the coils. So this thing's almost just a little old school, and like I said, how Brian has it set up, it drives really, really well, and with their actual limited engine they've been running all year, they've been winning races. Now just with the crate, that is kind of why we're down on power. That's a little bit about this package and how it's way different than the 18T, because like I said, usually we're changing shocks, we can change torsion bars front and rear and make adjustments that way, but Brian has a little bit more of an old school deal, which, as I mentioned, it drives really, really well. A couple of the guys that have driven in the past talk about it's like sitting at the dinner table and grabbing the steering wheel. So now that you guys know a little bit more about the car, hopefully the rest of the night will make a little bit more sense. But now we're heading out for the heat race. We ended up 4th quick in our group. With that crate motor, it's just really, really tough in qualifying because obviously you don't have the horsepower that some of the other cars have. But sometimes if the track starts to slicken off, you can really race with them. But anyway, we are rolling off from 4th here in this heat race. Let's see how we do. Well, our heat race, well, that did not turn out how we wanted it to. Started 3rd, ended up running 6th, and that is going to obviously hurt us going into the rest of the night. I wonder, though, I'd kind of be interested to see your thoughts, but there was a huge difference with how the car ran the first lap or two of qualifying, and then how it kind of started to run the rest of the night. We started to kind of encounter some problems. The first lap or two of qualifying, never running a crate before, never running this car, it felt really, really good, but then the last lap of qualifying, something felt different. I just didn't feel anywhere near as fast as those first 2 laps, and then we went out here for this heat race, and I just felt even worse than kind of at the end of qualifying, and so we thought maybe we were having an issue with the engine. I didn't lift for that whole 8-lap heat race, and as I mentioned in qualifying, the car handled really, really good around the top. So smooth, I could run a little bit below the top, I could run right in it, and it felt both kind of the same, and I didn't really feel like I would lose a lot of time on guys in front of me in the corner, but just down the straightaway, it seemed like they would just yard me and pull away, and I was more of just kind of like one consistent speed around the whole track, if that makes sense. And this was the first night that Brian had the crate engine in the car. They literally got it done like the night before, and that's why I was able to run. So immediately we kind of went through a couple of different things. We changed gears to try to help with the RPMs, and also he made some adjustments with the feeling to lean out the engine a little bit. A fun fact about the crates is they only turn about 64 to 6,500 RPMs compared to like a limited, which is probably in the 76 to 8,000 range. So your gearing for both of them is completely different, and with us going backwards there in the heat race, that sets us up to start last in the B main. We start 7th and they're taking 4. And the not so fun part about this B main event is my younger sister Carly started right in front of me. You already saw the vlog on her night on this run at Cottage Grove, so we have to pass 3 cars if we want to put it in the show, but also try to test some things because this crate engine is an experiment. We wanted to see how it would run, so we made those adjustments to see if it'd be any better for the B main event. Let's go out there, ride along with us, and see what you think.
Northern California, it's Oregon, Washington, the front row, jump to the limit, John Holmes, he can't get there. Flag.
So we have some good news and bad news after the B main event. The good news is, you guys saw, we did transfer, we snuck into that last spot. I thought we might be in trouble on those last couple laps, but we held on. The bad news is the engine ran even worse than the heat race and worse than the end of qualifying. And that's kind of how I described it after I got out of the car. It seemed like where it ran, when we first went out there for qualifying, felt good, and every lap since that, it just kind of started to slowly go down. But it kept chugging along, and I started trying some different stuff and moving down and running high, and no matter what, the car still handled really, really good. With less horsepower, you would think it wouldn't drive as good, but the coils still handled fine. So, I mean, it was a dream to drive. I just didn't have any speed, and especially still down the straightaways, that's where guys would really catch me, and then in the corners, I could kind of somewhat maintain. And Brian and the rest of my crew could really see what I was talking about from the grandstands, so our game plan going into the A main event is we were going to make some adjustments, kind of look around. We didn't find any problems, but if it didn't run dramatically better once I got out there, just to kind of start and park, do some laps, see if it runs all right, and if it doesn't, pull into the infield. So now you're going to see us roll off for the A main event, and like I said, we needed to test to see if it would run any better with the changes we made. My only worry is if I wasn't able to maybe pass some cars and get far enough up, is you're stuck in this weird part of the field where just it seems like the wrecks usually happen, and so I really wanted to try and avoid that, especially with how our night was going. But now we're going to roll out there for 25 laps around the Cottage Grove Speedway. They just reworked the surface, so it has a bottom, it has a top, and slick right through the middle, so you can run multiple different lanes. We start last. Let's see how far we can make it up and if we find any speed. So we were able to roll the I-1 off the track in one piece. I talked kind of about that certain group of cars that just kind of get together in mid-pack of the limited races, and it seems like once those packs get together, there's always one big wreck. As far as though trying to find some long-term speed with the crate, we weren't able to find anything that would have helped me over the course of the A-Main event. With some of the adjustments we did to feeling and a couple of other things, it did seem like it fired off much better. Like when I kind of went to buzz the tires, it seemed like it took off. The acceleration felt better even when I got up towards the top speed, but it only really ran that way for about 3 or 4 laps, and then it kind of got back on that decline of going down just every single lap a little bit worse. And once I kind of got to that point and I wasn't able to pass cars and I knew I was just going to get lapped soon, I decided to pull in just in case there also was maybe something going wrong under the hood, or if just things weren't running right to get out of everyone else's way, you know, for their own race. And I thought a great way to end this video would be to share a quote from Brian after the races. We're standing there behind the car and we're kind of just talking about everything, and kind of going into the night, Brian was super confident in the crate. Even though he had just recently got it and got it in the race car and he hadn't ran it at all, he felt like it could be competitive. And he said, Tanner, you know, going into it, I was talking with someone at the beginning of the night and I told them, you know, crate engines are awesome for the limited class because you can do 100 nights with them and have 0 problems. And now I'm realizing that that's 100 nights of misery. So that is the quote that I will probably remember for the rest of my life. First time I ever drove someone else's sprint car, 100 nights of misery. Incredible. Even though it didn't go the way we wanted to, it still makes, I guess, for a good story. And Carly was also able to get some laps even though she had a rough night. But at the end of the day, we got to race side by side, got to race together at the same track for a Speedweek event in 2021. So that's going to end this video. Once again, thank you so much to Brian Crockett and everyone at BC Motorsports for giving me the opportunity to drive the I-1. Hopefully we can get it tuned up and, you know, I'll get the chance to drive it again here in the near future. See you guys all in the next one. Deuces.